Please remain standing as Chaplain Colonel Edward T. Brogan, the Senior Air Force Chaplain for Arlington National Cemetery, delivers the invocation.
Let us pray. Lord of our lives, our hope in death, we cannot listen to taps without our souls stirring. Its plaintive notes are prayer and music of hope, of peace, of grief, of rest. Lord, please honor this TAPS exhibit, that it might focus attention on the reverence shown in funerals for the U.S. military around the world, and especially here at Arlington, that it might also focus attention on the sacrifice of United States veterans that we recognize this Memorial Day weekend. But prepare each one of us, Lord, for our final bugle call when you summon us home, when the trumpet of the Lord shall sound and death will be no more. Amen.
Good morning. What you just witnessed is one of the many hundreds of events that the average tourist who is passing behind us right now would not have any idea what's going to happen, yet are able to take advantage of, whether it's the President of the United States arriving on Monday for Memorial Day or the Emperor of Japan laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you come here to Arlington, you just don't know what's happening next. It's wonderful. Colonel and Mrs. Deal, Colonel Hall, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Arlington Cemetery. There's nothing I could think of more appropriate than the notes of taps to symbolize Arlington Cemetery. This simple melody is played dozens of times each day, whether it's at the Tomb of the Unknowns or at one of the 23 funerals that take place throughout the cemetery. It symbolizes a fallen soldier. It symbolizes his or her deeds and the final tribute that our country pays to them. This is the Memorial Day weekend, a time when we commemorate the passing of these many thousands, hundreds of thousands of men and women who have served this country to preserve our dignity, to preserve our freedom, to preserve our way of life. And taps is at the center of this. It is a great, simple piece of music that just is so fitting. And I'm so thankful to Sergeant Villanueva, who came to me with a very simple idea to have this wonderful display over here to complement our visitor center and to tell the story of taps. And I'm so happy that we are here today to dedicate this and open it up to the public so that millions of visitors who come to the grounds here at Arlington Cemetery each year will have an opportunity to understand what happened during the Civil War and how it transformed into a closing musical tribute that is played at each veteran's funeral here at Arlington Cemetery and around our country at our nation's military cemeteries and other cemeteries as well. I don't have many remarks this morning, and I just don't want to go on too far, but I do want to ask Sergeant Villanueva if he would come up with me for just a moment, and I want to give him a small tribute of appreciation for his many hours of work and say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be followed by Colonel Deal. Colonel Deal.
Mr. Metzler, Colonel Gardner, Mr. Holcomb, Ms. Myers, members of the military musical community, all you people passing by, hello. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It's my honor to be here representing my counterparts of the other services, Major General Ivany of the Army, Admiral Weaver of the Navy, Colonel Larson of the Marines, and Commander Norwood of the Coast Guard, as we join with Mr. Metzler in opening this grand display that you're getting ready to see. And that exhibit is what we're here to focus on. It's not the words of some colonel coming to talk to you, but this colonel is compelled to perhaps help you better understand a little bit this exhibit, help you better understand the bugle call, and maybe a little bit about what led to the exhibit's creation on such an appropriate day that we're opening it. The music of the bugle call, taps, was born during the Civil War as the Union Army's General Daniel Butterfield wrote it initially as a lights out kind of call. General Butterfield's sword and also his spurs are part of the display that Sergeant Villanueva has captured for us. However, it quickly became considered an appropriate piece for military burial as well. And it was first used in 1862 right here in Virginia for military burial. And it's since become arguably probably the most familiar tune native to America. And you're going to see that lineage as you walk around the display. But this exhibit itself, you might wonder yourself, what caused it to come about? It was born of a question asked on a bus. The ceremonial brass was heading to a funeral at Arlington about 3 years ago. Sergeant Villanueva was asked the question, what's the history of taps? Well, he said, I don't know. But not one that enjoyed not knowing an answer. This guy, who's a Baltimore native, he's got a bachelor's degree in music from Peabody, a master's from Kent State University, decided to learn about it, and that's what he did. He researched. He did extensive research at both notable and some obscure libraries and museums. And then as a result, he's authored a 6-page history of taps, which can be found on the website for Arlington National Cemetery. He was also inspired along the way to create this exhibit, and it's worked for 3 years to make this come into reality. His initial goal was to have a centerpiece of the exhibit, and he didn't set his sights low. He went for the Kennedy bugle from President Kennedy's funeral. And with a lot of work, with some help from the Army and Colonel Shelburne, and also with the Smithsonian, he was able to get it from the Smithsonian, and that's part of this display now that you're going to see. Well, word spread of his project around the world, not just around the country, around the area. And you're going to see such things over here as the drum used for the Kennedy funeral, a rare keyed bugle that was obtained from the Fisk Museum out in California, and much, much more that I'll just let you go and see. And I've got to offer one humorous note here. I've been working with Sergeant Villanueva on this for a while, and we were talking about his background and his college. And as we spoke with each other, I found out that, ironically, back in college, there was one subject that he did very poorly in. And of all things, it was history. Well, I suspect if he could bring back that college professor and show him the research he's done, show him the website, show him this display, he'd probably get his PhD in history. What a dissertation. So, Yari, A+. And then finally, I've got to admit that I've got a special personal love for the bugle. I've owned 3 of them. I've taught Boy Scouts to do it for merit badges, and there's a Boy Scout display over here. And I've seen and heard them play taps in ceremonies and in funerals. And like many of you out there, I've personally been a part of some of those funerals in national cemeteries because I buried both my grandfather and father, who are veterans, with taps in the background. So roughly a year ago, we also brought this tradition back to Bolling Air Force Base, as some other bases around the world are doing, and at 10 p.m. at night, every night, we sound taps to signify the words of the song that day is done, gone the sun, from the lake, from the hills, from the sky, all is well, safely rest, God is nigh. But I'm not the one to talk anymore about this. It's the man that did it, not unlike his peers out there in the other services that do this every day as tribute to our veterans. I'd like to yield the floor to someone who has lived and breathed bugle music as part of his career, of his essence, and he's loved it well enough to dedicate himself toward this exhibit. Someone who's played taps with dedication and compassion for 14 years on these very hallowed grounds here for more than 750 funerals and burials. So, ladies and gentlemen, the exhibit's creator from the Air Force Band, America's Band, Master Sergeant Yari Villanueva.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Colonel Deal. This is certainly a wonderful day, and on this day we honor not only the creation of a musical tradition unique to our nation, but also to those who've performed this solemn honor. A project like this could not have been possible without the support, cooperation, and advice from so many. Without their assistance, this project could not have succeeded. With their assistance, this project could not have failed. It is to each and every one of them I give my deepest and most heartfelt thanks. The sound of the bugle made it possible to convey commands over a great distance, and even during a battle, the sound could be heard above the roar. Years after the Civil War, veterans could still recall images of conflict when a bugle sounded. I think it's safe to say that almost everyone here today has been moved at one time or another by the sound of those clarion notes. Oliver Norton wrote in 1890, "That familiar sound echoing among the rocks where they had fought brought back, perhaps more vividly than words could do, the memories of the days when they had answered so often to its sound." Today we have on display not merely tubing, fabrics, and paper, but also the memories of those who performed a vital task in our military. We honor those men and women. Most were ordinary, yet some found themselves in extraordinary circumstances. All came from different backgrounds, but each possessed the qualities we hold paramount in military life. The lofty ideals of integrity, excellence, and service before self are, without question, values held by these men and women long before it was ever set down as guidelines. They are the ones that set the standards. For each bugler, then as today, the most sacred duty one performs is the sounding of taps. The 24 notes created on a hot and humid July afternoon in 1862 comprise our nation's most eloquent melody. Playing for a nationwide audience or playing at a ceremony for a few people, it is performed with the utmost care and perfection. We celebrate the lives of some of the musicians who did just that. Gustav Sherman, a 12-year-old who served 2 Civil War generals and befriended Tad Lincoln, the son of the president. John Cook, a 15-year-old who put his bugle down to man an artillery piece during the Battle of Antietam, then sounding the charge at Gettysburg. Louis Bentz, who left his homeland of Prussia to serve as chief bugler at his beloved West Point for 40 years. Oliver Norton, the 22-year-old who on that hot summer night started a tradition that remains to this day. John Martin, who changed his name from Giovanni Martini so he could be more American, who became George Custer's bugler and was the last American soldier to see General Custer alive. Frank Witchey, whose taps was heard on November 11, 1921, as the World War I unknown was buried at Arlington. Calvin Titus, an army bugler who during the siege at Peking during the Boxer Rebellion responded to a request for volunteers to scale the wall. He said, "I'll try, sir." George Myers, who played for Blackjack Pershing, Hap Arnold, Jonathan Wainwright, and the interment of the World War II and Korean unknowns, and whose love of the bugle placed the honor of sounding taps above all his musical duties. And the quiet Christian man from Grand Rapids, who on a chilly day in November 1963 sounded the nation's farewell to President Kennedy before a worldwide audience, the largest ever to hear those 24 notes. The instrument has undergone changes over the years, as has the use of the bugle in today's military. While at one time it was a major means of communication, it's now relegated to ceremonial duty. A recording has replaced taps on most military installations around the world, and sad to say, even at some funeral for those who've served our nation. It is my hope that with this exhibit, there will be a new awareness in this tradition that is practiced here at Arlington every day. It is to every person who answered the clarion call to duty that we respectfully dedicate this TAPS exhibit. Sir, if you'd like to join me.
Now it's my pleasure to have the superintendent of Arlington National Cemetery, Mr. Jack Metzler, and the creator of this exhibit, Metzler and Yarly Villanueva, to cut the ribbon and officially open it to you.
It's a big shot.